So I'm delighted to be speaking to my very good friend Jane Mackie of Rora Dairy, who I've known for a number of years and who has got such a brilliant story about looking for opportunity and seeing opportunity and setting up a business that has real purpose. I think she's got real purpose and drive and motivation. So Jane, I'd really love to hear about your journey to starting Rora Dairy and how things have been over the last few crazy weeks for you.
Thank you, Jude. Lovely for you to get in touch. Rora Dairy. So my crazy journey is I've been married to a farmer for 12 years. And over the years, I've looked at lots of different things, and I'm married to a dairy farmer. So I decided that we should probably at some point make dairy products. Many might think that's crazy, but a very good friend of mine said to me, what's the issue? You've married a dairy farmer. What else are you going to do with the milk? So it seemed at the beginning a very easy problem to have. I would go off, learn how to make yogurt, slightly obsessed about the yogurt, but I'll come back to that, and start a company. It's become a lot more complicated than I ever thought. It is exciting, it is fun, and it keeps us going. We now work 6 days a week. I was warned by a lady who also makes yogurt that this is a crazy concept and I would have very long days. We are now fulfilling those very long days and working very hard.
So go back a bit though and tell me about when you first moved to the northeast of Scotland.
So I moved from the north.
What your background was.
Okay, I moved to Aberdeenshire in 2008, having been working and living in London. Worked in advertising, that was great fun. Lived in Islington, worked in Soho. Typical London girl, commuted by underground, had a couple of very small children, had a really nice au pair, sometimes a nanny. It was all very, very easy, looking back. And then I decided, what did I decide? No, I fell in love with a farmer and turned around and married him 6 months after meeting him, and moved to the northeast of Scotland, where it was a bit of novelty for the first 3 months. And then I realized I was here to stay. And it was quite windy, and it was quite cold, and it was quite remote. And so then I started thinking, well, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I'm now here and I have no job, I have no commute, and I have not very many friends, but I have to get on and live. So I think the answer is I had to keep myself busy. So at the beginning we did some holiday cottages, and then other people seemed to be putting up turbines. That was quite a big project, actually. It took quite a lot of effort, money, investment, stress. But in 2012 we put up a turbine. And then a lovely friend said it was probably a good idea that I actually got a job. So I worked in Aberdeen for a few years in communication, and then for the university, which was great. Met wonderful people, loved every minute of it. But at the back of my mind all the way through, I had said, because I live on a dairy farm, maybe we should make product. It had been a dream. Jude, you and I have been discussing it for years. I thought I should do it. So eventually, I'm not sure what happened, but I did take myself off on a course near Plockton.
I remember you going.
And I spent 3 days learning to make dairy products. It was quite fun. I made butter, and I made creme fraiche, and we made crowdie, and we made yogurt. Everyone else there was going to be an artisan producer on their croft. So they were working on very small scale. And I, with the back of my mind, was thinking, we have a lot of milk, so what am I going to make? I have an American mother, and thus the yogurt obsession. There's a lot of yogurt on the market, and not all of it is healthy yogurt. So I wanted to be able to I couldn't understand why we can't have just fresh ingredients in our yogurt. So I went on a bit of a mission that this is possible. This is possible to make a yogurt without additives. And that then became my obsession for a year before we launched Rora Dairy, which is a yogurt without additives.
And I think what I love about Rora Dairy is the branding as well. So talk about that, because it is really beautiful, beautiful logo and beautiful branding and everything. I just love all aspects of it, from Instagram to social media to stuff. So just talk a bit about that and how you came up with it.
I think the really has spent 20 years working in advertising. So the bit I probably know best, rather than having to learn to make yogurt, is the slight brand obsession. So I did do probably a year's work before on where the product should be positioned. You know, I did what you ought to do. You know, who my market was, where the product should be positioned, trying to find a great designer. I was very blessed actually on the finding the designer, because it's a very cute story of putting our Facebook post up with a bucket and a churn and an incubator, and I said, right, here goes, I'm now going to start making yogurt. And that was really just to my friends to tell them about my mad crazy existence in the northeast of Scotland. And a very good mutual friend of mine from university came back to me and she said on message, if you need a designer for your packaging, I've got a really good one. She's working freelance. So I then hired in time this wonderful girl called Elisabetta Giordana, who is just so skilled and has worked for some of the best brands in the country, and she did some of my design work.
But how clear a brief did you give her? Did you know exactly what you wanted it to look like?
Oh, I did. I had lots of other examples of brands I like. We did a lot of work with that. She came and stayed for 3 days. When we first spoke, she said, I'll pop out and see you. And I said, I'm not in Wiltshire. You have to fly to Aberdeenshire. So she came and stayed for 3 days, which was truly fantastic. And when I met her, we were wearing almost the same clothes. However, she's substantially younger than me, and Italian and very cute. So that was great. And she gets me 100%, and we still work together.
And what challenges have you experienced along the way? What's been the biggest challenge, or the thing that given that you put so much planning and preparation into it, what surprised you the most?
Food products are very, very difficult to make a margin on. It's very difficult to actually succeed, stay in the business. There's lots of protocol, there's lots of regulation, huge amounts of health and safety, not health and safety with regards to, but basically loads of regulation around the product. And I don't think I had realized quite how intense the food regulation was. You know, we've never had a problem, to be fair. We've been absolutely stringent, but it is something that I lose sleep over. You can go out of business as quick as you've gone into business. And to stay as a player and then provide product to multiple distributors is work. It's nothing but, you know, a lot of hard graft. And I think probably my biggest skill is I'm very determined. So is it a skill? I don't know. Is this, I've got a lot of tenacity. So I don't really let no be an answer. So if somebody turns me down, it's a high chance that that's the person I'm going to work on for the next 6 months to a year to make sure they say yes. I'm not pushing it. I'm very aware of the capacity we've got at the moment. So I don't want to over-promise and not deliver the same product in the same manner to everybody. So I treaded, you know, at the beginning we were selling just the local shops. We left the house the first day, my son and I, with 200 pots, and we couldn't go home until we sold them. That was a sort of old school way of selling. And it just is no different now. It's just a bigger people thought about relationships. And it's having confidence and maintaining that confidence, which I think is a really tricky thing. Because
is it an easy sell?
No, it's not an easy sell. It's a yogurt. There's thousands of yogurts out there, and there's some very big brands with very big budgets doing multiple products who are able to be, and a lot of the brands don't make the product. So it's much easier to build a brand and not make the product and outsource the making, because you just, you know, have the fun bits. But to actually make it and deliver it as well as build the brand is more tricky than I probably ever thought. I've been telling other people how to do it, but doing it myself is a whole different ballgame.
So it's interesting that you talk about the artisan produce side of things. And I spoke to somebody last week, and they were talking about how they've been working in a stressful professional career, and they decided to pivot for lifestyle, primarily for lifestyle purposes, and make artisan produce. And it was pickles and chutneys and that kind of thing. But actually having then gone into that production and working from home, I think, and their main outlet was through food fairs and markets, food markets, Christmas fairs, that kind of stuff. Actually, how stressful it became to produce the stuff, enough product, enough supply for the fairs, but then the margin on it, as you say, was so small that actually compared to the day rate that they've been on previously, it just became something, it became more stress and more for less return. So therefore, you know, they gave up on it actually, which I thought was really sad. It's really sad. It's really, you know, it's just, what a shame. But where's the turning point for you? Where was the turning point between those early stages and then actually what makes the difference and it becomes a business of scale?
Well, I think it's having more and more sales, and it's having the, you know, and realizing at the beginning, you're like, oh, this is going to be fine. And, you know, the figures say one thing. I think I was quoted in Business Insider saying I was going to be turning over 5 million in 3 years. I mean, that's funny. Just shows how naive I am, you know, or was. And now it's much more realistic. You know, we're nowhere near those figures, and we're growing and growing and growing. But it is hard work to get the volume, because you might get into a supermarket and you think, oh, job done, but then people have to buy the product, and how do you get that word out there? So unless it becomes a trend, which it wouldn't be wonderful. I aspire for people to start thinking Rora Dairy is their trend, and realizing it's a healthy yogurt. I think that's the bit to try and get across, is we can't make it better. And people say it's expensive, yeah, but I'm using all Scottish ingredients. You know, it's a totally sustainable product. That is very rare. As big manufacturers say to me every day, you are living the dream, but how long can you sustain it? Well, I want to keep living the dream because that matters to me. That's the bit.
You've glibly glossed over that, but actually getting into the supermarket for many producers, food producers, or for many producers, is a massive deal. How did you achieve that?
Well, it's quite an interesting one, because I vowed the first 6 months that I wasn't going to do it. And then, of course, it all comes down to volume. Morrison's are wonderful. They started off this process where they were just buying local. And you could go to them and you could say, well, can I supply my local 3 shops? So we did that. And we did supply the local 3 shops. And obviously, because I'm me, I decided that 3 shops maybe wasn't enough, and maybe we could do more. So I kept asking the question, and eventually they broke, and we're now in 18. And we're now looking at potentially, we supply them once a week. That's good, that's fine. And we're now potentially going to supply them more. But COVID is definitely complicating supply chains for the buyers. They've had a lot on their plate. And then because I had always wanted to like to be in Waitrose, but they've got one Scottish brand called Katie Rogers, and they say that's great. But Sainsburys seems to be a very good fit. So I went to the Highland Show, which I think is a very important thing for artisan producers to know, that if you go to the Highland Show, into the food hall as a producer, you will meet buyers. And it's the only place in Scotland, you know, going to your little local farm fairs, you don't meet the buyers, whereas they come to the Highland Show and they have stands at the Highland Show. So you can just say to them, I'm at the Highland Show, come see me. And that's one of my top tips to a producer who actually wants to go into supermarkets. Many don't, but if you do, the chances are they will wander around the food hall and they will spend 5 minutes. So I was very blessed to have a whole team of Sainsbury's buyers come to my stand, like the product. It worked. We're in there. We've got to stay in there. It's hard. It's constant. We're going promotion next week.
But some people talk about getting into the supermarkets as a really, you know, uphill struggle and you know, a really stringent, difficult process to go through. You make it sound like, oh, they came over and tasted a few cups of mugs, took cups of yogurt, and then away we went. So we were in Sainsbury's. Was it that easy?
No, I don't think it was that easy. I think that, you know, we met, I then called her again. We had a few more meetings. I do, as you say, we have a great brand. We have a great product. We are slightly different. We are not, you know, we are using all Scottish ingredients. There's not a person out there who doesn't like that as the concept. So if you can do it, and you can do it at an affordable price, or at a price that actually will sell, then you're in for something. That is a difficult game to play. You know, we are not making money yet. It's all about volume. So what we've done with what I think, because of spending all that time positioning it, what we've done with the position of the product and knowing where it can sit in the market helps my conversations with buyers.
And where does it sit? I mean,
it sits, if you look at, I wanted to be the kind of Yo Valley equivalent in Scotland, but then they're not using all local. dare I say it, and they're also using some additives in some of their flavour products. So in Scotland, we don't have much competition. I mean, there's Katie Rogers who's doing a great job. She's in Waitrose. She's also making butter. She's doing milk. She's on creme fraiche. She's doing a lot with the food service. There's Rowan Glen, that's huge. I don't want to necessarily be Rowan Glen. And there's Graham's, who are also very big and making a very different product to us. So we wanted to be a premium, beautiful dairy product, and that's where we are at the moment, and hopefully maintaining it.
And you're talking about going to the Highland Show and meeting the buyers, but who else have you met that's helped you or influenced you or advised you or mentored you over the past 3 to 4 years?
I have been really lucky. I am blessed, probably because I'm quite sociable, so I like people. And in fact, a person I did meet at the Highland Show, and who just become chairman rather than chief exec of his own company, was Alistair McPhee of Glenburby. And I rather cheekily said, we don't have much to do, so how about being my mentor? And that has been a huge success. He has, at the beginning, we probably met every 4 months. He always comes to see us here. He has got a very big company. We have a very small company. But many of the food producers in Scotland who are really successful are not first generation. So we are, we are starting from scratch. But he's been really good with his guidance and his time and putting me in the right direction of people. And also, there's lots of local fish companies who've been great. IFC been really good, Macduff, Thistle, all been really supportive of what we're doing, what we're trying to do. Farmley, there's some great food processors up in Aberdeenshire. And I think one has been very good at the fact that you do get their names and they have had the odd event. So I think when you reach out and ask a question, people are helpful and people want to help. And I think the other thing is collaboration. I think that one of the key things is being able to have these conversations and work together.
So when you say the fish processing or producing firms have been helpful, how? By taking product or by helping you in a different way?
Well, Sainsburys came when we had I've said it's all very easy to sell Sainsburys. When you're having these conversations, there's so many different processes and so many different people and so many different systems. There's systems even now that I haven't got quite right. Because I'm doing everything from invoicing to making to distributing to everything, whereas most of these big companies will have different people in different departments and they're probably employing 100 people. So I try very hard not to drop a ball, but occasionally I have to be very careful. When Sainsbury's came to us, they said, we have to have your delivery 6 days out of 7. Now Morrison's is once a week. I was like, 6 out of 7 fresh products. What does that mean? What's that going to do to me? So, of course, I didn't say no. I said, let me give that some thought. And I also said that cost of every pallet is expensive because I'm little. I'm not sending 20 pallets. It gets cheaper and cheaper the bigger you are. But it's not when you're little. So you really automatically should just say, no, not doing that. I can't afford it. A pot of yogurt costs £1, 80. A pallet costs 60 quid. That's a lot of yogurt. So, but I didn't. I sat back and thought, well, what can we do about this? And I decided I went around all the companies locally in my head who would probably be supplying Sainsbury's with a chilled product. Because that's the other thing. And I got to Thistle Seafoods, who aren't very far away, 15 minutes. So I basically had met the lovely Mr. Scatterty 3 years ago at a party. And I emailed him and said, you might not remember me, but I'm the crazy yogurt lady. I wondered if I could give you a call and ask for your help. So yeah, sure enough, we had a call, we had a meeting, and he said, no problem. So every day we supply our little pallet of yogurt into their huge depot in my little van. And we take turns in doing it. And he stacks it on the massive lorry full of fish product. And it goes down to the Sainsbury's depot. And I pay them rather than the Long Lane or one of the big distributors. And I wouldn't be able to do what we're doing if that wasn't the case of them being so helpful.
Well, it's a random question, but I'm just interested. Where is the Sainsbury's depot? Where is it? Is it in Scotland?
Glasgow. Yeah, near Glasgow. And you know, this will go to every depot because they're that big, whereas we're just going to the Glasgow one because we're only dropping in Scotland. So one day, I think it was Easter Sunday, our pallet ended up in somewhere in England. But other than that, we've had pretty much, you know, pretty good success rate. It made Sainsburys a bit nervous at the beginning that we were doing this, but they agreed to it, people agreed to it, we agreed to it, and that's where we are at the moment.
How brilliant though, how brilliant, and how environmentally friendly in
yes,
post-COVID times. So how, obviously we're still in the middle of COVID-19, what impact has that had on you?
I was very worried at the very beginning. We lost all of our food service, obviously all of our dear hotels and, you know, holiday companies. We supply Northlink and Calmac. Obviously that's hit hard. Bid Food, we'd like to go into a couple of places in England, and sadly that didn't happen. So a couple of our big distributors were not supplying to at the moment. But the flip side is the local shops all over the country are really buying local products, and our local sales through Williamson's and Inverness and through Cress throughout the UK really did rocket. So it basically made up, and that was the month of April, made up for the lack of food service. Now I think it's all going to settle down a bit, and I think that's going to be more difficult because we still don't have the food service, and people aren't going to be going to their local shops as much because they will be going back to supermarkets. So I think for us, it's going to be the next 3 months that are going to be more tricky than April, May. So
supply has gone up then, above normal levels.
Yeah. Yes.
And demand has gone up. Yeah.
Demand and supply went right up in April, May. But you could see it in the sales figures of who was buying it. It was little shops, corner shops, because people were shopping much more locally because they didn't want to go into a supermarket.
So I'm interested in that as well, because the distribution channels, again, that is something that would be quite difficult to navigate as a startup and as a small artisan producer. So how did you manage to cement those relationships, or to find the distributors that you wanted to work with?
There's a magic company called Cress who supplies all the farm shops all over the UK and have won all sorts of awards. And I think if you can supply Cress, that's a real result. And they were my second distributor. We went to Williamson's first, who basically I just called them up and said, can I come see you? And they liked the product and they took it. And Cress were great.
Cress, the T?
No, Cress, C-R-E-S-S.
Right.
Very young, dynamic company and very helpful. Love them all. But I do remember when I first met them, that was quite daunting. I went to a trade show before I started exhibiting, which I think is also a really top tip, is go and actually see what the trade shows are before you ever launch a product. So you can see what products are out there. Is there any competition? How are people setting themselves up? What do their stands look like? How professional do you have to be? And all these things matter. And the buyer for Cress doesn't ever have a badge because she doesn't want anyone to know she's the buyer. So I basically wandered around and eventually I asked somebody who the buyer was. And then I went and had a conversation with her. I basically interrupted her and had, we then started a relationship. And whenever we have a new product, I give it to them first.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And how have you coped with increased demand then and supply with your workforce and with social distancing?
The beginning, we didn't have any staff for 3 weeks because when they said lockdown, everyone left. But we're a food supplier, so we're key workers. So we just did it as a family because luckily my children were at home because they weren't at school. And then it was quite full on. And then one of them had to go back to school. So they are
grown-up children, I just want to clarify.
I will, yes.
It's not child labour.
No, they're big. They're 17 and 19. So that was great. And then slowly people have come back. And what we did at the beginning was we did a shift. So I had one in the morning and then one in the evening. So they didn't work together. And now, as of this week, they've both come back on the same shift. And we have Have we? Yeah, we've had a wonderful girl doing work experience since January, and so she's carrying on till September, and she's fantastic. And
Doing work experience, in what role?
Well, she's meant to be doing marketing. So she shadows me in everything. And actually, she was meant to do a lot more, as in we were sending her off to work in London for a few days, and we were meant to be doing lots of trade shows, but all those have been cancelled.
So how is she a graduate, or how old is she?
When you say she's doing on her 3rd year. She's doing a placement with us.
Yeah, oh, how brilliant! How brilliant!
And we love her. So she's great. So she's been doing a lot of helping with a lot of our marketing, and she does production, because I basically said I can only have you if you do both, because I can't have too many people to manage or around me. I need to basically make sure that people can all do everything. And we are getting more automated, so the aspirations will have less people and more ability to create more product quicker.
So where's the innovation? How can you innovate, and where are you getting those ideas? Because I think there's lots of businesses who are looking to innovate and introduce more technology, and we've all been forced into Zoom calling and Teams working. Where's the innovation in your business?
Well, at the moment, ours is really bigger, better equipment working more effectively. So getting more product out the door and more cost effectively. So we've just put in a line. So before it was, one person would fill a pot, one person would lid a pot, and one person would date stamp it, or a derivative of people. Whereas now we've just got a machine that now fills lids with date stamps, and we love it. But, little things like that make a huge difference.
But you know what, when we were talking off camera, you were saying how difficult it is to source equipment in the UK. Mm-hmm. And I've heard that before. And you've obviously got Gregor McIntosh of Glendavenny near you, and he tells a brilliant story about going to Italy and buying a bottling machine from the mafia, he claims, in a dodgy car park. He makes it sound, I'm exaggerating slightly, but it's an interesting theme that's coming through from some of the people that I've spoken to. A lady who has a social enterprise selling baby clothes that has found it very difficult to find manufacturing in the UK. Is post-Brexit, post-COVID will there be an opportunity for it? We've got all the intellectual property in the UK. Why are we not doing it?
I think artisan dairy products are not really rife in the UK. There's quite a lot of cheesemakers, but there's nothing in comparison to Italy, France, Germany. I mean, we really are not hot at it. So the best equipment is made France, Germany, sometimes Italy. We have some producers of it, and we have been speaking to them, and we have some very large scale producers. So there's a kind of middle road we've started making yogurt in a cheese vat. That's how we've done it. So we bought that equipment from Germany, having looked at lots of equipment. We could have probably maybe bought it in England. I have on my desk 6 or 7 quotes of the next step, and they all vary massively on the process. And that's really difficult if you've never done that before. What is the right process? Is the product going to be the same? Where is it? So you have to be then testing stuff, looking at stuff, making sure it's the right, and it's a big investment. So I think that we can do it. Fish processing has got it. They're making a lot of equipment here, or Iceland. There's nothing to say those guys couldn't turn their hand to making dairy equipment. So I think any of the big manufacturers of machinery could do what we need, but the chances are we'll probably end up in Germany or Italy again. The problem with that is engineering support. I mean, my husband spent all of last weekend underneath our vat, having to do it himself because they don't send any engineers over, and the 2 bits they sent actually were the wrong bits, and it still didn't fix it.
And I think that's the story of a startup, isn't it? Is that you have to do everything. You have to put your hand to everything, and not necessarily the areas that your skills lie in. So now, what's your role now, and what do you want it to be? And
okay, my role still seems to be the same as it was, which is producing yogurt, and I'm desperate to get out of that factory. Not to say that I don't love it, but being in there every day, it's just not where I want to be forever. And I need to get out and run the business. I want this business to be a great business with the values I want it to have. I want it to be, known for healthy dairy products. So let's keep going and making more. but I need to get out of production in order to come up with other products, make other products, and have a little bit more headspace, other than, you know, knowing that I've got to make 600 of raspberry and it's got to be delivered to Joe. You know, I have to really, so I don't mind doing that bit. I'm very happy. I'll still probably end up being overseeing it, but I'd like not to always be in it. So my aspiration, and you can hold me to this, is by January next year, I am not going to be in production.
And we talked in the past about assembling, you talked about assembling a board. How is that? Is that something that would help you? Is it something that you'd pursue?
I think at the moment I've been very blessed by people just doing it without being on a board. So I ask you questions, Jude, you're helpful. You know, we've looked a lot at raising funds and money and all that stuff, and actually we've put it all on hold because of COVID. I think other businesses are much worse off than ours. I've got people at Alistair McPhee to turn to. I'm very blessed to have quite an entrepreneurial family who kind of spur me on. A mother who spends most days telling me that keep going. I'm certainly not allowed to slack. I have two sisters who have a lovely life, but that's fine. So I think, no, I think we'll hold on the board. I'd like to get to the next level and really be seeing a difference from what we're doing with our milk and dairy products.
And do you think, have you found your purpose and your passion?
Well, I never thought this would be my purpose and passion. I think I had days, and particularly a year ago when I thought this whole thing was totally crazy, and I probably spent more days in tears than I did with a smile on my face. I feel now that we really are beginning to make some headway, and the sales are beginning to grow. I can see where it needs work and where it doesn't need work. Yeah, maybe. I don't want to do it forever and ever. It's especially working this hard. I like it. People say I thrive on it. Maybe I do, but I'd like to do another 5 years of this and hope it's really working. If it's not, then you can all have it.
But now's the time, we talked about it, now's the time to be brave, and you have so many ideas that you've had for a long time. They're not necessarily new because of COVID and because of the crisis that we find ourselves in. So, you know, what's the next step?
Well, the weird thing about COVID is it hasn't affected me almost at all. So I think from that perspective, all my family, we have been really blessed, and we have discussed this. We are all busy, happy people that keep going. So we are blessed to be working from home, at home, in the countryside, fresh air, and, you know, able to run our business. So that is great. Now what we need to do is have a little bit of headspace, because we've had a crazy 3 months. Think what's next, grow the business, develop the business, create maybe a couple of healthier, higher protein products, and see where we go.
Brilliant. I'll be watching. I'm going to round it up there. Thank you very much for your time. I love speaking to you always, and I always feel inspired and happy having spoken to you. So thank you.
We love you too. Thank you.